So how can we rewrite an expression using the distributive property? Well, this is a pretty straightforward skill. And what I'll do is for each example, I'll kind of cut out some of the prerequisite work so that you can see that eventually the goal is to get you to be able to do this in your head. But let's say we started with a problem like 6 plus 30. So if you have 6 plus 30, and we wanted to rewrite it using the distributive property, we would first need to find the greatest common factor. So we have to find out what the greatest common factor is between 6 and 30. And to do that, we'd have to find what all the factors are of 6 and 30. So we have 1 times 6 to give you 6, 2 times 3, and then when you get to 3 times 2, you can stop because you already have 2 times 3 here. Cross those out. You have all your factors of 6 are 1, 2, 3, and 6. For 30, you do the same thing. So 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 4 times nothing, so we cross that out, 5 times 6, and when we get to 6 times 5, we can see already have 5 and 6 on both sides, so we eliminate 6 times 5. So my factors of 30 are 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 10, 15, and 30. So at this point, since I've found all of my factors, I'm looking for the greatest common factor, which I can see that 6 is the largest number that shows up on both lists. And again, I'm hopeful that you can already do this in your head. But for those of you that couldn't, use this as a reference until you get used to it. So now what do we do with this information? Well, that 6 that we just found as our greatest common factor, we're going to rewrite that on the outside of a set of parentheses. So this 6 right here is going to go right here. Okay? Then we're going to ask ourselves, what number do we multiply 6 by to turn it back in to the original 6 in 6 plus 30? Well, the answer is 1. 6 times 1 is 6. And you could have also said 6 divided by 6 gives you 1. And then plus 30 divided by 6 gives you 5. And if you weren't sure, you could always use your factor pairs, because when you did 6 and you asked yourself what number times 6 gave you 6, the answer was right next to the original 6, which is right here. So 1 times 6, and when you look right here, you have 5 times 6. So the number that's missing, if you wrote your table out, will show up right next to the greatest common factor. Okay? So your final answer is 6 times 1 plus 5. And that's it. So let's try it again. 32 plus 44. So this time, I'm not going to find the factors for both. I'm only going to find the factors for my smaller number. Because in finding the greatest common factor must always be equal to or smaller than the smaller number. So if I take 32 plus 44, this time I'm only going to list the factors of 32. So I have 1 and 32. But what I'll do now is I'll test to see if 32 is also a factor of 44, and it's not. So I keep going. 2 and 16. Is 16 a factor of 44? No, it's not. Keep going. 3 times nothing. Cross that out. 4 times 8. Is 8 a factor of 44? No, it's not. 5 and nothing. 6 and nothing. 7 and nothing. Cross that out. I get back to 8 times 4, and there's nothing left. So 8 times 4, I already have that. That means I'm done. So since I found all my factors, and I have not found my greatest common factor between 32, 16, or 8, now I come to the other side, I check 4. Does 4 go into 44? Yes, it does. So that means that my greatest common factor is 4. And I didn't really have to write all the factors of 44. So now that I know my greatest common factor is 4, because 4 times 11 gives you 44, I can now answer my question the way I did last time. So I'm going to write it above this time. So what does 32 plus 44 become? I write the greatest common factor outside, which is 4. Then in parentheses, I'm going to write 32 divided by 4 gives you 8, plus 44 divided by 4 gives you 11. And again, if I look at my factor pairs, the number that's missing, or that should go in place of the 32, is already here. And the number that goes in place of 44 is already right here. So my answer is 4 times the sum of 8 and 11. So by now, I'm hopeful that you're able to use this, practice finding the greatest common factor. And so now let's do it in our head completely, because you should be able to recognize that the greatest common factor can be calculated in your head. So I look at 16 plus 36. The greatest common factor between 16 and 36 should be 4. So I'm just going to very simply type 4 times the sum of 16 divided by 4 is 4, plus 36 divided by 4 is 9. That's how I would rewrite it using the distributive property. 12 plus 20, my greatest common factor again is 4. So 4, open the parentheses, and then 12 divided by 4 is 3, plus 5. 56 plus 32. My greatest common factor between those should be 8. So 8 times, inside the parentheses, 56 divided by 8 will give you 7. Plus 32 divided by 8 will give you 4. So the answer should be 8 times the sum of 7 plus 4, or 7 and 4. 24 and 28, the greatest common factor for these, again, is 4. Open the parentheses, and inside, 24 divided by 4 is 6, plus 28 divided by 4 is 7. And finally, 9 plus 15, the greatest common factor between 9 and 15 is 3, times 9 divided by 3 is 3, plus 15 divided by 3 is 5. So that's it. So as you can see, if you know the greatest common factor in your head, this takes no time. If you don't know the greatest common factor, it's not hard to figure it out. And you just keep working on that until you get to a point where you can do the calculations in your head. The numbers inside the parentheses come from dividing each of the original numbers by the greatest common factor and putting it in the same place where the numbers started. So I hope that helps. Let's get it done.